Welcome to Calming the Chaos, where I help you find peace in a chaotic world. I'm Tracy Cannella, licensed mental health counselor who talks about chaos from a mental health perspective. And I give you self-help resources you can use to calm your chaos in any situation in this world. Isn't this fun? It's not a substitute for counseling or psychotherapy, but just a lot of helpful hints and tools. So if you're on board, feel free to tune in. And now, let the chaos begin. So today is September 29th, and earlier this month, I received an email saying September is National Recovery Month. And I wondered, what is the Recovery Month all about? So before researching it, I pondered the meaning of recovery, and it can be applied to so many different situations. It's a little vague about what the month was about, right? Because we can recover, which means that we can get back what we used to have, when we are doing something as far as property, or we're recovering from an illness, or even when you're in the military and you are recovering people or ammunition or weapons that have been left in battle. We are gaining back what we used to have. So when I looked up National Recovery Month in September of 2024, it encompasses 3 areas: mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention. And a lot of this information can be found on SAMHSA, SAMHSA's website. SAMHSA is an acronym for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They have so many resources on recovery in these 3 areas. So I thought I would do my part. In September, although it is the end of September, I'd like us to keep Recovery Month in mind throughout the year. I would like to show you a couple of clips that highlight what it is, what this Recovery Month is, National Recovery Month, and then also some examples of mental health and suicide prevention ideas and some of the states of being that people are in mental health-wise and substance abuse-wise, and offer some of my opinions. Because these 3 areas, mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention, are really hot topics that can cause some chaos in the minds of people. So hopefully we'll be able to straighten some of this out with some greater awareness. So let's go and look at the first clip.
Hi, I'm Dr. Miriam Delphin-Rittman, Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Every September, we observe National Recovery Month, a time to celebrate the millions of Americans who every day find the strength and courage to reclaim their lives from substance use and mental health conditions. Recovery is real, and it transforms not just the lives of individuals in recovery, but also their families, friends, and others who support them. With a holistic approach and individualized support, people with substance use and mental health conditions can and do experience recovery and live productive lives in their communities. At SAMHSA, we work year-round to improve access to resources and services that respect the traditions, values, and beliefs of everyone who needs mental health or substance use recovery supports. This National Recovery Month, we come together again to celebrate and encourage everyone on a recovery journey, and to raise awareness that whether you're seeking help for yourself or a loved one, you are not alone, and help is available. With a focus on health, home, purpose, and community, SAMHSA provides access to resources that promote physical and emotional well-being, that emphasize the importance of stable home environments, that encourages individuals in recovery to engage in meaningful activities, and that highlights the vital role of social connection in fostering and sustaining recovery. Recovery is not just about overcoming challenges. It is a unique and personal journey of hope, resilience, and transformation. Recovery Month calls for a renewed national commitment to enhancing awareness and working together to help reduce stigma and discrimination surrounding substance use disorders and mental health conditions. To learn more about SAMHSA's recovery support efforts, visit SAMHSA.gov/recovery. Or if you or someone you know needs help or resources, visit Findsupport.gov. To find treatment programs in your area, visit Findtreatment.gov. And if you or someone you know is in crisis, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org for help available in English and Spanish 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We stand with you in your recovery journey.
So the lady in this video is from SAMHSA, and she is talking about what Recovery Month is. It is really about raising awareness, lowering the stigma about mental health conditions and people who are experiencing substance abuse. She did not mention suicide or suicide prevention, but if you go to the SAMHSA's website, part of Recovery Month is suicide prevention. She also talked about resources, finding support, and finding help for mental health and substance abuse issues. I would just like to say thank you for organizations like SAMHSA for raising awareness in recovery months like this, because it is something that causes us chaos, and that is just the way that we are not ourselves. And when we're not ourselves and we are struggling with something like a mental health condition or a substance abuse condition or a suicidal thoughts, ideations, or urges, we are not ourselves. And we would like to be able to have access to resources that will help us to be ourselves again. So thank you, SAMHSA. I will put some resources in the show notes for you because there are too many for me to flash across the screen just now. Okay, so let's go on to the next clip, which highlights in my neck of the woods in Seattle, what's going on with substance abuse and people who are living on the streets at 3rd and Pike in Seattle.
Behind me is 3rd and Pike, and we're going to try to speak to some of the people that live here and find out firsthand what life is like.
They broke into the Ross. No way, dude.
All right, check this out. We just missed it. Some guy ran up here and smashed this window of this Ross Dress for Less, stole some stuff, and ran out. As you can see right here, it's closed. And yeah, this guy tried to bring this big box out here. There's a bunch of merchandise on the ground. We got some Calvin Kleins.
All right, let's get out of here.
Saw some
No, seriously, let's get out of here.
Yes, sir. That's crazy. Oh, super poor timing on my part, picking up the stolen object right as the cop walks out. So who am I here with?
Liam.
What is life like out here on 3rd and Pike?
Crazy as hell. A lot of drugs, a lot of bullshit, mayhem. A bunch of people walking around like zombies. A couple years ago, it was heroin that was the main drug out here. And you would see needles scattered everywhere, like everywhere you go. I mean, playgrounds, everything. There'd be needles everywhere, all over the city. Far and few between people who still shoot up out here, but I mean, you'll see it occasionally. But if you call a number, they'll come and pull up on you and give you needles, give you whatever you need.
So they have mobile needle delivery service?
Yeah, they do. It's like a needle exchange, harm reduction, and then they have harm reduction places where you can go and give your needles. You exchange them one for brand new needles. But a lot of the time, even if you don't have needles, they'll just give you boxes of them. It's crazy.
How does it make you feel when you see people like this gentleman who's on the ground just balled up and crippled with drug addiction?
Uncomfortable. I mean, I don't like to see it, but I mean, I guess being out here is a part of life, you know? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like, you can't get these people sober if they don't want to get sober themselves, you know?
So there's essentially nothing you can do unless they want something to be done?
Yeah, 100%. If you don't want to get sober for yourself, you're probably not going to get sober. You can get a dose of fentanyl for $1, you know?
That's super crazy. How cheap was heroin?
I wouldn't say cheap, but it was like $10 for a point, or like 60 to 80 a gram. A fentanyl pill is a lot stronger than like a point of heroin, so when the fentanyl pills came out, they took over.
How bad is the fentanyl addiction?
You see a lot of these people, like, they'll be going crazy, crying, and like just begging people to get them high. And, you know, like, I used to be an opiate addict, and like the opiate withdrawals are horrible.
For someone who doesn't know what it's like, how is the experience of going through a fentanyl withdrawal?
It's like the flu times like 5. It's horrible. It's like the worst flu you've ever had in your life. It takes days. And so a lot of these people don't want to go through withdrawals, so they keep doing it.
As always, the extended help be on Patreon. And is there anything else you want to say to people out there?
Just don't do fentanyl. Tell your loved ones that you love them, because you don't know, you know, people die every day, man. You don't know when your time's going to be.
You know, I knew it was bad up in Seattle, and this film was made a while ago, and it is still bad up there. It's probably even worse. Now, I wanted to explain one thing that was highlighted in this interview with the man on the street and the dog, which the dog was adorable, by the way. He said that there were trucks coming in and distributing needles, and there were needles laying around like crazy. And I don't doubt that that is true. But I did want to explain why these programs exist and why he said harm reduction. Harm reduction is that if people are going to be using substances, they're already doing themselves harm. But by providing them with fresh needles, people will kind of debate about this, right? Because on the one hand, it could be seen as enabling behavior, keep using the drugs. Or on the other hand, it could be, well, you know, we know you're going to continue to use the drugs, so we'd like you to not get HIV, or we'd like you to not have any kind of health complications when you are using the drugs. So harm reduction is that second piece, is we want to reduce the potential harm that you're doing to yourself when you're doing something anyway. And that's present in a lot of mental health programs, substance abuse programs, even group therapy. People who are in inpatient facilities sometimes will use harm reduction techniques to help people at least not die, right? That's what we want to do, is to preserve human life. Another thing Liam said was, get sober for yourself. And that's when it's going to stick. If you have a reason or a life worth living goal that you want, you're going to get sober for it. And if your friends or family members are urging you to get recovery and you really don't want to, it's probably not going to stick. It could if they put strong enough conditions on it. But really what's going to make the difference is if you do it for yourself because you want to preserve your own dignity and respect, or because you want to live a life worth living. I think one of the wisest things Liam said was just don't start. And I agree that that was true for me when I started smoking. I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard to quit smoking. This is when I was 16 years old. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this. Yeah, I was smoking at age 16, if you didn't know already. And then when it came time to quit, it was when I was going to get my wisdom teeth pulled when I was 19. It was so hard to quit. But you know, I got a big motivator. That oral surgeon said, well, if you don't quit smoking, we're going to have to probably scrape out the inside of your face after your surgery. So I quit right away, but it wasn't easy. And I kept thinking, why did I ever start in the first place? Because it was hard to even start. I mean, you go through all the coughing and hacking, and then it gets a little easier afterwards. But please, if you're out there using fentanyl, or if you're thinking about using fentanyl or other street drugs, or even smoking, even consider it with alcohol use. It's so hard to stop if you get an attachment to a substance. So many people start using drugs and alcohol because of pre-existing mental health conditions. And for me and my smoking, it was more like fitting in with some of the crowd that I was hanging out with, and they were smoking, and so I wanted to do it anyway. But some people actually do have mental health conditions that they use drugs and alcohol for. And I would urge you, anybody who's out there who's doing that, to talk to somebody like a doctor or a psychiatrist in order to get legal and prescription medication, or a counselor who's going to give you some mental health help with the problem that you're struggling with. Counselors are bound by confidentiality, so there's no reason to be afraid. And if you don't like the counselor that you get, then you can always choose another one. But please ask for help if you're struggling with a mental health condition and you're using drugs or alcohol to cope with that mental health condition, like anxiety or depression. Sometimes drugs and alcohol are used. So please, again, contact a mental health counselor or a medical doctor or a psychiatrist, psychologist to help you out with the mental health condition. And then the substances really won't be a problem. Now, one of the things people can do with substance abuse is they can go to a detox center, a 72-hour, which is 3 days, place where you can be medically detoxed. And so when you walk out, you're not experiencing the physiological withdrawal effects that Liam was describing in that clip. So you can go to a 72-hour detox, and then you can go to a treatment program to treat some of the mental health issues, or you can go to outpatient treatment to treat some of the mental health issues. But there needs to be a soft landing. And what I mean by that is that the environment around you, the people that you hang around, like your family and your friends, have got to be supportive. Just like the SAMHSA lady said, be supportive and be helpful to people who are struggling with some of these conditions. And finally, what I want to say about this clip is the opposite of addiction is not abstinence and not clean, but connection, connection to self, community, and that takes trust. And so in this upcoming clip, we're going to talk a little bit more about trust and how that comes into mental health and the mental health crisis that we're facing.
It's called one of the greatest public health challenges of our time. Our nation's mental health is in crisis, and there's one very big thing contributing to it. Good evening. Experts say it is a crisis, and it's made worse by the COVID pandemic and the growing impact of social media, particularly on our young people.
Yeah, this week, the current U.S. Surgeon General and all of his living predecessors met to discuss the mental challenges Americans are facing.
And I have to look at my 3 teenagers every day and know that I'm not handing them a better world than the world that was left to me. And a lot of that is because of our failure to really focus on mental health and to do the hard things that it's going to take to actually overcome this mental health crisis that we're in.
7 of the U.S. Surgeons General met at Dartmouth College, with one participating by video. The historic meeting highlighting the depth of the crisis.
We have become professionals at putting on masks on and walking around society and making it seem like everything is going fine, like we don't need any help, that there's nothing to see here. We do that in person, we do that on our social media feeds. But what it betrays is the reality of what's happening is that a lot of people are walking around suffering.
About 42% of high schoolers say they constantly feel sad or hopeless. That's up more than 50% from 1999. 41% of undergrads reported overall depression, and 14% reported suicidal ideation in the past year.
We've lost trust in everything. And I think some of that's intentional. I think there's things at play that make us want to distrust each other and distrust anything, any institution, churches, politics, whatever it is. I mean, trusting your neighbors. But we have to figure out a way to go back and establish that trust.
Even though the problems that we've described here and the drivers of those problems are really profound and entrenched and structural in nature, that doesn't mean that we as individuals can't make a difference in the mental health and well-being of people around us.
Now, that group said it's critical to create better safety standards for social media, train more mental health providers, and cover more of the cost of mental health care. They also urged everyone to be kinder to each other and also to be supportive of the people in our lives.
People who are suffering are trying to hide. Like the guy was saying, we're living behind these masks, pushing down our dissatisfaction with our lives, and we are not letting it show. And then at the same time, we're seeing people on social media who seemingly have perfect lives and feeling that we're lacking, alone, or unsupported. And then the lady comes up with the whole trust. We've lost trust not only in ourselves, but in our friends and family members, people around us, our neighbors, but in our institutions. And I think that's part of the reasons why some people get fed up and do these mass shootings. That's a behavior that is not helpful for the mental health problems that you're struggling with. So their solutions were pretty simple. Somehow restore trust in each other and in our institutions, better safety standards for social media, increased training mental health professionals, of course. We need more of you out there, any helper at all. More coverage for the cost of mental health care. And this is the message that I've been delivering all along, is that if you are not going to be a counselor or a coach or a helper of some kind, then just be kind. And that's what they said. I felt so validated in this video because that's what he said too. And finally, be supportive of people in our lives. And I would just like to add to that, that you should talk about it to somebody you trust. And if you don't have anybody in your life that you can trust, then there are plenty of resources on SAMHSA's website or at NAMI, which is the National Association of Mental Illness, that you can access for free. And they're available 24/7 in your local crisis center. These people are people that you don't know, but you can trust because they are bound by the laws and the ethics of confidentiality. So I would encourage anybody who is having any sort of mental health or suicidal ideation to talk about it. So speaking of suicide, suicide prevention, suicide crisis management, suicidal ideation, here is my final clip, and this is about suicide.
These are the voices of people who have been impacted by suicidal thoughts or behaviors in a young person in their lives. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people between 10 and 24. It is one of the most challenging and frightening topics to talk about for a family. It's also more important to talk about than anything else. Keep a few important things in mind. Suicidal thoughts are common. If a young person experiences suicidal thoughts, he or she can feel scared and too ashamed to talk about them. While thoughts are always a concern and can be warning signs, suicidal behavior is far more dangerous. When young people find out that suicidal thoughts are common, they often feel relieved to know that they aren't alone and they aren't going crazy. Suicidal thoughts are usually temporary. Most people with thoughts of suicide only experience them for a short time before they pass. Even if they return, young people can learn to cope with temporary distress and manage their thoughts and discomfort. When youth can cope with and manage bad news, bad moods, difficult social interactions, or simply the awkward task of growing up, they tend to think of suicide far less frequently. It's okay to talk about suicide. Asking a young person, "Are you thinking of killing yourself?" with a calm, confident tone sends a very important message. It conveys that it's okay to talk about anything. It can provide hope and relief to a young person who is feeling hopeless. Treatment works. Youth can experience relief and a reduced risk of suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Sometimes the thoughts and behaviors are temporary, and creating a safety or crisis response plan has been shown to be effective during a hard time. If the thoughts continue or get worse, evidence-based treatments to prevent suicide are reliable ways to address the most dangerous conditions. Resources are available. From immediate crisis services to long-term treatment, youth and families can find many different helpful resources. Counselors and medical providers are able to help treat those who struggle with thoughts of suicide. Community and school prevention programs offer education and support to families. Emergency rooms, 911 operators, and first responders are well trained in crisis management. And there are many 24-hour crisis lines available to help young people experiencing suicidal thoughts or families in need of help. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available by phone, text, chat, Facebook, and Twitter, among others. Youth who struggle with suicidal thoughts or behavior can feel scared, sad, and ashamed. Families will be concerned and want to help. Starting the conversation is the most important first step. Families should know that they have the power to change things for the young people they love. Sometimes that all-important question and the help that can come from it can save a young life.
You know, I was shocked to hear that it's the second most common cause of death in people ages 10 to 24. That's just astounding to me. So what I've always thought about suicide is that we don't really want to die, we just want the pain to end. So again, we have to go inward and think about what is causing us pain. And if it's a mental health issue, then work with a counselor. It could also be a physical pain issue that is causing mental health problems. It could be both. It could be other things, family systems problems, conflict at work, whatever it is that's causing pain. So what they were saying in the video is having better skills to cope with the emotions that are happening and the pain that is happening within yourself is key to preventing a suicide and suicidal thoughts and actually the acts of suicide. One of the things that this video said was asking somebody, do you want to kill yourself? And I would have to say I would soften that a little bit because it's a kind of a shocking statement. Do you want to kill yourself? Instead, what I'll do is go on a continuum from mild to a little bit more confrontative. So on this end of the spectrum, mild would mean, hey, sometimes do you think about not being here anymore? And that was what I was trained to do when I worked in public health and with children, smaller children. And I almost thankfully never had to ask that because it never was that bad as far as the dysfunction goes. But we don't ask kids, do you want to commit suicide? Do you want to kill yourself? Those are really harsh words, but we do want to have an idea of where the child's mind is at. So that's a milder way of asking that question. Another mild way is asking just if they feel like sometimes do you feel like hurting yourself or do you feel like hurting somebody else? And this can especially be true with people or little kids or teens who are struggling with anger. Do you sometimes feel like hurting yourself or somebody else? So a little bit more on the assertive end is, do you feel like ending your life? Do you ever feel like you have thoughts of ending your life? Do you have urges to end your life? And on the more confrontative end of the spectrum is all of the above, which I just said. And well, do you have a plan? Do you have the intention to end your own life, to harm yourself? And do you have the means to do that? And so if all three are present, if they have a plan, they have an intention, and they have the means, then that may mean that I need to break confidentiality and call somebody who can get you to safety. And that goes for homicidal thoughts, urges, and intentions and plans as well. So when we think about suicide, we think in terms of prevention and crisis management. So in terms of prevention, we've got all kinds of resources on SAMHSA's website, and I will also have them all in the show notes. And then there's crisis management, which also I will give you a ton of resources in the show notes for crisis management if you have suicidal thoughts, ideas, and urges. So in closing, I'd just like to say, let us remember Recovery Month, September. Let us remember it the whole year long, okay? Everybody here, we're just trying to do our best and support each other. Be kind and practice good mental health, wellness, well-being throughout the whole entire year. Thank you so much for listening to Calming the Chaos today. I hope this was helpful, and please take advantage of the resources I've put in the show notes for you or your loved one or friend or person on the street that you may run into who is struggling with mental health, substance abuse, and or suicidal ideation urges. Thank you so much again. Take care. Thanks for listening to Calming the Chaos podcast. If you found this podcast interesting or helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can also go to www.calmingthechaospodcast.com to listen to all Calming the Chaos podcast episodes. I look forward to sharing my next podcast episode with you. In the meantime, take care.